We said what's going on? It's your boy Javon, and you are now listening to the JVaughnology Podcast. Yee yee. So I definitely dropped my mic earlier, so I don't know if it's working. I mean, we're gonna see because after I record this, I'm gonna have to listen to it. But I really hope this might work. Like the little, well, actually, I didn't drop it. It kind of had like a conniption. I have a mic that has the little net thing in front of it, and the little net thing like flipped over and twisted and like hit the ground, and it was just a lot going on. And I was just like, am I not supposed to record a podcast today? Like, is this a sign? Because I peep signs. I'll be like, that's a sign right there. That means they ain't meant to be. I'll be quick to say that shit. All my friends know. I'll be like, that's a sign right there. That's God telling me right now that I shouldn't be doing this. But I mean, everything seems to be okay right now. So we're just gonna proceed with the podcast. Okay. Um. So hope everybody's doing great. Hope everybody's living their best of life. We are on episode 4, and we made it to the 4th episode. You probably just got to listen to the 3rd one. I'm sorry that I sound like super like uh in the 3rd with the intro because I was so tired. Like I'm thinking y'all know I went to the club the night before and then I had a busy day that day, so my energy was like literally on the floor. But we still talked about a lot of stuff. You should definitely go check it out. We talked about trauma. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So today's as you can see by the title, we're gonna be talking about that it's okay to be alone. Like dead ass. Like it's fine. You don't have to be up under nobody. You don't have to be codependent. It's okay. So we're gonna talk about how I learned it and how it happened and how I'm living my best life now. So let's start back from the beginning. I was practically an only sibling. Well, I wasn't practically. I was well. It's like how can I really? Theoretically, I have siblings. I have a brother who is 26. I have a sister who is 21. I have another sister who is 20. And then I have a little sister that I think is about 13. So I was the only sibling for 9 years theoretically because my little sister was not born. She's the same. Me and my little sister, me and Jada have the same mom, which is the 21-year-old, and then the other ones we have the same dad. That's a better way to put it. I know I'm kind of confused you. That's why I'm trying to get it together. So either way, I was the only sibling because we didn't live together. The me and my little brother, we never lived together. Just put that out there. So I was literally only sibling until I was 9. Now, did I consistently have cousins and stuff that I used to hang out with? Yes, of course. And did I have friends? Yes, of course. So I wasn't that much of a loner, but as in somebody who's like living in the same house, it wasn't like that. Like I know a lot of people, they have like their cousins that live with them and they've been with them, so they like see them as siblings, but I didn't have that. Like I would see my cousins like Ranisha and stuff like that growing up periodically, or my cousin Shireen Shanae like growing up, but we never really stayed in the same house. Even like Stephanie and Andrew, like we weren't siblings. We didn't stay in the same house, but we seen each other a lot, so we're super close. So that worked out. But I always had my alone time. So like we were, I was always with my mom or with my aunt, and I was usually the only child there. So only siblings. So um I'm used to being in my own bubble. And I kind of got out of it like growing up because I felt let me try to explain it to you. So, I went to go visit my siblings, my brother and my little sister that's on my dad's side. I went to go see them when I was younger. No. At that time, again, I am a loner. Like I like my own bubble. I like my own space. And one day I remember that I brought all my toys because, I just had to bring them because I'm going to have my own time to myself because I'm used to being in my own bubble. So I brought my toys or whatever and I brought them over because I knew I was going to have time by myself. So I remember they were like playing or doing something in another room because they're so used to being around each other all the time because they always like they practically grew up together. I think they're like 3 or 4 years apart. So they're used to always being around each other. So me, as in somebody who didn't have another sibling that come in until like 9, I'm not used to always being around my little sister. Like me and my little sister were kind of loners, like because she was so young. I mean, we could be around each other here and there, but we still had our bubble time. Like around that time, I think I was like what 13, 14 or whatever when I went to my sibling's house. So my little sister was like 5, 6, maybe. So we still had our separate lives, if that makes sense. Like she would be going to sleep and I would have when like I would play with my toys. She'd be taking a nap. Like like personal space. We have personal space, personal bubbles. So I'm not used to having siblings around me all the time. So I know how to go away and go somewhere else and play with my toys in the cut, mind my business. So I remember one day when I was there, like I've been around them like the whole time I was there for the most part, but then one time I was just like, okay, it's me time. So I went to get my toys and they had a bunk bed, so I was at the top of the bunk bed playing my toys, and I remember my siblings coming in and they were like, hey, like what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm just playing my toys or whatever, and they're like, oh, okay, and they kind of like looked at me like, are you gonna offer us to join? And at that age I was like, no, this is me time, like go find something to do. But they're so used to having each other around to play and stuff like that. So then they kind of were just like, oh, okay. And then I think my little brother, or I don't know if it was his mom, they were just like, oh, he's having his me time and something like that. And I remember I kind of felt like bad because of that, because I was like, damn, like, well, they always play together. Like, why don't you play with them? But then in my head, I already had like my storyline set up with my toys out, so I wasn't worried about what they were doing. I had to get through my storyline. But that kind of triggered me a little bit because I was like, damn, like you really are like a loner. Like I didn't know the exact word of it at that time, but then I was just like, you really are like still a loner, even if you do have a little sister, you're still a loner. So I was like, okay, cool, whatever, and then I just kind of let it go. So then, from what was this? From about like 13 to 15. No. So when we moved to Atlanta, I was 15. So at that time, that's when my mom was dating a guy and he had 3 kids. So those 3 kids, they were super tight, like how like my uh sister and brother were, because they were like a few years apart from each other. So they're super tight. They do everything together. This, that, and this. So they're always around each other all the time. So it was kind of like a culture shock, like when we all lived together, because they was like always near me. And I used to be like, why are these people like around me all the time? And like then they have friends coming over and I'd be like, oh my god, like there's always people here. Like this shit is weird. Like I can't be in my person, and my room was downstairs in the basement, thank God. So I always had my personal space, which I loved. But then I was just like, okay, which one, you're gonna have to like stop doing that, because you're gonna have to be more like them to be more bubbly, being around people and this, that, and this. Like at that time I really was trying to experiment like being around people and being like a very bubbly person. It just so happened that it worked out and I became cool with like mad people. And then me and my then like that's it's kind of like I started becoming codependent on people, and that was not a good look for the home team. Thinking about it now, I definitely was that, but I didn't mean to. It just happened because people were always around, so I just was so used to having them around. Like especially this one girl I used to be super super best friends with. If you know, you know. I used to be with her all the time in high school. Like literally, that was my like we were like brother and sister. We never left each other's side. Like it's practically like you would think we lived together. That's how much we was together. We used to take naps together. Like we were that type of brother sister relationship, because she was the only child, and I practically see myself as the only child. So like we clicked up, and then we just always were close ever since. Um, but it was very sketchy, that friendship. If one thing, I should have peeped a lot of stuff back then, but at that point, I'm very much a sweetheart, and if somebody like literally just start calling you their brother, like you're gonna originally be like, okay, you're gonna be like, okay, well you are my sister, and like apparently God put us together, so you my sis. So me and her came super close, hung out all the time, and then that's when I started to learn. Like now looking back, like I think that's the time that I started clicking to be codependent. Um, and I never was I never would have. That is wow. This podcast is very. It made me realize a lot of stuff. Yeah, I think that's when I became codependent, because I was so used to having her around it all the time, and then I'm used to having people in the house with me all the time. So that's probably when it happened. Wow, I'm so happy I got out of that. Anyway, we'll go into that anyway. So I started becoming very codependent on people. Like I was starting to not really want to go places without people being with me. Like I always had to be around my friends, or I had to always be around the girl I used to call my sister. And that's not good at all, because after after I graduated from high school, me and the girl that I call my sister, we always still talk and speak like in text messages. We used to call each other all the time. But then after she graduated from high school, it's like everything went radio silent. Like she stopped talking to me. She ended up getting with a guy who was just trash. He just whatever. Anyway, so back to me because my podcast. We don't need to be talking about other people who aren't irrelevant. This just is what it is. So growing up, I always had people. So growing up, I had people around me all the way in Atlanta, and then even then, after I graduated, I was always hanging out with my friend. Like I used to take time out of my day to make sure that I always hung out with them, just to get like some human interaction. Which human interaction is good with people, but it can start becoming toxic when you're starting to be the only person who's making sure that the human interaction happens, or you're just consistently around somebody all the time just because you just don't want to be alone, and that's not how I was before. So, ended up graduating, moving. Then I moved to Florida, right? So me and my roommate, we were real, real cool. Until she started doing sketchy shit, and then I kind of started distancing myself from her, and then I got into a relationship. And this is when shit get messy because again, I became codependent. I'm not gonna lie, I really I did because I'm so used to having people around me that once me and my roommate fell out, it kind of well not fell out, but once we stopped like really, she got back with her husband practically, and once I started becoming like I was alone, that's when I started like wanting to have people around me, but I didn't have any friends. So I mean, I did have a few people I hung out with, but as in for somebody who consistently that I fuck with heavy, I did not have that. So then I ended up getting into a relationship, which was the worst thing to do because the person ended up well, the first person I got started dating, I thank him for dating him because I actually have my best friend now, which he was originally the guy that I was dating best friend. So they were just kikiing whatever whatever. They were like the closest ever, which is beautiful for them, great for them. So then after me and that boy stopped like dating and talking or whatever, I went into another relationship because I didn't want to be alone. Like to be completely honest, I didn't. And I can admit that now because I'm grown and I can finally like let it out. Because my friends, I think they peeped shit like that. Like, and people peep shit like that, but I didn't want to say it out loud. But honestly, at that time, I didn't want to be alone. Like, I was living in a whole different state. I didn't know nobody like that. The only person I could think that could be my friend that I could have consistently around me and it's not gonna be weird is my nigga. So there you go. You guys just there we go. I admitted it. Everybody feel better now? Good. So we got into a relationship. The next thing you know, he gets kicked out of his house. Then he ends up living with me. And then I'm like, well shit, now this nigga really, really here. So like I really was never alone. So that that eventually falls through because you're just with a person because you just don't want to be alone, and that's a horrible way to get into a relationship. So we ended up breaking up, which was good. It needed to happen. And then after that, again, still having the same codependent type of personality, still want to be around people. Um, I date somebody else, which was a mess in itself, and then that didn't work out. So then, my best friend he moved in with me, and then he was just there with me, so we were just dependent on each other to like get through this whole fire that we call Florida, the Florida life. So we always around each other, always around each other. And then after me and him, we moved to another place. And then after that, we had a bad falling out. And then that's when I kind of had to really start reflecting, like, okay, well, Javon, you're having a bad falling out. At that time, I had a boyfriend still. So I was like, okay, well, you're not going to move in with your boyfriend because your boyfriend is very hit and miss. Like, it's very wishy washy. The relationship is very messy. So you don't want to move in with him. So you're going to have to move in by yourself. So I'm like, cool, whatever. So I move in by myself. But me moving in by myself, my boyfriend was there all the time. So it's just like, it's codependent. Like, bitch, when are you going to be alone? When are you going to have your time to breathe? Like, come on, girl, what are you doing? So I'm like, literally at 20, how old was I? I think 25. Yeah, 25 I had a birthday. 26 is when we broke up. That's like the day before I turned 26, I broke up with him because I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, I'm not going to go into another year of this age this big age being because I already went through so much shit with my 24, 25 because the quarter crisis is real, which we're going to talk about that too one day, but not today. And I was just like, yo, you really need to be alone. So I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. Let me just be alone. Like, we broke up, and I was like, listen, you're not gonna date nobody. You're gonna be in your apartment by yourself. This is what you need to do. So I'm like, okay, word. So the first few months were hell. Like, hell, because I'm so used to having people around me. And then I started getting into these toxic friendships where, like, these friends, they're very dependent on me. Like, I was seen as like a father figure. So they would be very dependent on me. I had to take them here and there, make sure that they were good all the time. Like, no offense to them now. Like, if they know who I'm talking about, like, listen, I have grown so much that all the stuff that I'm saying, I don't want anybody to take to offense because I don't genuinely hold any grudges or have any issues with anybody. And I just want everybody to know that now. So when you hear me talk about these people, don't think that I really feel some type of way still. I genuinely do not care. I'm over it. I have grown from it. We have lived. We have learned. We are hair flipping and keeping it pushing. But when it came to that, like, the first few months, it was very much like I would hang out with that person all the time, and then that person would kind of stay with me here and there, and then again I was not alone. So I'm like, son, I need to be alone. So me and that person, she finally gets a boyfriend. She falls off the face of the earth. There we go. Boom. Javon, now it's time to be alone. Did not get in a relationship for a whole year. Did not. I didn't date anybody for a whole year. And I found out so many things about myself. I found out that I was codependent in relationships. I was very codependent with people. Like, I needed to have somebody around me all the time. And that's when I was just like, what happened to the me time? Like, where did that go? Because you was very strong and holding on to that for, like, the longest until you moved to Atlanta. And then you just became, like, a codependent bitch. So I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. This is when I'm learning, like, how to be alone with myself, how to do things by myself, like how to go to movies by myself, go to the park by myself. Because I used to have to call people and be like, yo, you want to go to the movies? And then, like, they'd be like, oh, I can, or I have to flake, or this, that, and this. But that person that was there when I first moved in, since she got a boyfriend, she was just all about her nigga. And that happens with people. They turn into those type of people. And that works for her, and she lived for that. And I appreciate that happening, because if she didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to be alone. So I became a loner. It was very good times. Like, I used to go to movies with myself. I used to vlog a lot at that time on my YouTube channel, because I was just me by myself for the most part, and I loved it. Like, looking, it was hard. It was so hard at first though, because when you're around people all the time, um, it's kind of like you lose the sense of yourself, and you think that you really have to be around people to have a good time, but you don't. Like, you can literally be by yourself and you can be chilling. Like, especially, you don't have to be in a relationship either. Like, you need to, like, learn how to love yourself. And I know a lot of people learn that during the quarantine. So I beat you bitches. So quarantine wasn't that bad for me. It was a lot of the quarantine. We'll get into that as well, because it was a lot of growth in quarantine. But for the most part, a little bit of my growth started, like, the leaves, because like, there's roots and then you have stems. So I was growing, and then I was making stems before I became a flower that I am now. So I was growing and I was getting the leaves at this time when I was by myself living in my apartment. So I was learning how to, like, literally, I would cook food for myself. Because before, I never did that. Like, I never worried about cooking or anything like that. I was very much a microwavable bitch. Throw that shit in the microwave and go about it. I learned how to cook. I learned not that well. Not until I lived with my last roommate in Florida. But at 26, like, your boy was a microwave king. I can't lie. It was what it was. But I learned how to cook, and I learned how to take responsibility for my bills, which I did before, but this time I was, like, very on top of my bills. Like, I learned how to budget. I was in school, like, girl, I was doing the thing. But that time I really understood, like, it's okay to have me time, and you shouldn't let anybody deter you, or I don't know the word to use, but it's okay to have me time. Like, it's okay to be selfish. It's just, like, I didn't really. I learned like bits and pieces of it before the quarantine to be selfish. Um, because I was just like, you really need to make sure that you prioritize yourself. Because I used to always be in everybody else's business, trying to figure out like what's going on, so I don't have to worry about like me and my issues. And yeah, once you sit down and you have to be by yourself, that's when you learn that you need to worry about your own issues. So now we're gonna be jumping into like quarantine, the quarantine time. So when COVID hit, girl, girl, I had a roommate at the time, so it was okay, and but it still was very much me being alone because she was pregnant. And we kind of did depend on each other here and there for stuff, but for the most part, I was really alone. Like at that time, I really learned to like be alone and understand that you really only have yourself. Like if the world is going to shit and you have no choice but to stay in the house, this is when you're gonna have to learn to be by yourself. So the quarantine helped me out as well. For the most part, like I learned what things I like to do. I learned everything that like I wanted to start journaling more. I started doing that, reading. I started doing that, like, and then I finally learned that it's okay to be alone. Like I feel like growing up in society now, like people be like, oh, you have to be around people to be that girl, or you start like making your mind be like, is there something wrong with me being alone? Like there is nothing wrong with you wanting to be in your bubble and being alone. Take it from me, like being around people all the time, giving out your energy to other people really does fuck up your mental state, because you shouldn't have to be scared to be alone. Like that is weird if you think about it. Like if people who always want to be around people, I don't get it. Like I just don't understand. There is no reason for you to have to be around somebody all the time. Like let your brain flow. Like a lot of people don't want to do it because they don't want to really sit down and soak in them. And that's a problem, sis. You need to go to therapy, because if you can't sit down and soak with yourself and like reflect over your life and see where you want to better yourself and how you want to grow, that means that you're avoiding and you're running from something because something has happened way back then that you cannot consume. So you're trying to literally go everywhere else and run from it. I really think you should go to therapy. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I really feel like that should happen, because that was me. I was that person who, the reason why I didn't want to be alone is because I didn't want to sit with my thoughts. I didn't want to have to really go through the process. Like there was days that I was alone and I was crying, and the reason why I was crying because was going through so much shit and I never gave myself a break to breathe. Like being alone is the time for you to breathe, and you have to literally get your mind together. I did go to therapy. Shout out to my dog that's in Miami, because she was my therapist. And she really made me sit down and be like, listen, you need to stop running from whatever you're running from, and you need to just take it in. And you need to learn from it. So, like, every bad situations, like with friends or with family or with people just in general, like, you need to really reflect. So what I did was I reflected on them. I thought about them, and then I had to forgive them for all the fuck up shit that they did, and I had to also forgive myself of all the shit that I used to do. And I need to understand that everything happens for a reason, and life is what life is. But honestly, for the most part, it really did teach me to appreciate myself, like, and do things that I want to do for myself. Like, I shouldn't have to want to go. I shouldn't have to not want to go to the grocery store because nobody can come with me. You know, like I shouldn't have to not want to go to the movies because nobody comes with me. Like I shouldn't have to not want to go to a concert because nobody comes with me. You know, like I don't want to. I shouldn't have to miss out on stuff because people have lives too. And if they don't want to go with you, that's okay. And I'm definitely learning that here, living in Atlanta. Like I don't have to be around people all the time. Like generally, I'm okay with being by myself because I know myself, and I know that if I'm not with nobody, I can just either hit them up when I want to hit them up. Like it's not like I shouldn't have to be around people, and that's okay. Me time is okay. Being alone is okay. It's just time for you to reflect on everything. Like being a busybody is cute and everything, but it's very tiring. And then also being one of them people who always are around people, you're giving out your energy. Like, and sometimes you give your energy to the wrong people. So you're giving energy to people that don't really fucking matter when you can be using that energy to go back into yourself to progress yourself and progress your own growth. So, I'm a flower now. That's what I'm saying. Like, my stem has grown up to be a flower, and I love it. Like, I feel like it's so crazy because when I like look back, it's like, damn, son, like you really were around people. You were by yourself for a good amount of time, and then you became this codependent bitch who was always with people and dating people and all this other stuff. And yeah, no, like that's just not a way to live. Like, and I feel sorry for people who are like that. I mean, live your life, do whatever you want to, girl. Live, do your thing. But I feel sorry for people who have to be around people to be able to enjoy their life. I can't imagine going into a relationship and like really knowing what I want without me living alone that for that good period of time and going through quarantine as well. Like, if I didn't go through those 2 times, I think I still would be dating niggas that I'm used to dating because I wouldn't have learned what I deserve, and what I need to understand is that we're separate people. Like, when you go into relationships, you need to understand that you're a person and they're a person, and as long as y'all are separate in that way, I think it really will progress better. Like, I'm single now. Let's just put that out in there. Just let y'all know. Whatever, girl. Life is life. We'll talk about that. Whatever, whenever. But the only way that you can really go into a relationship and then not be toxic and that people not being so codependent on each other is if you can stand alone and say, I am who I am, and this person is not here to better me or to help me or anything like that. He's here to grow with me, or we're growing together because they are the person that they are. So my last relationship, we were good at that. Like, he was his own person, I was my own person. We didn't have to be around each other all the time if we didn't want to be. We both were okay with being alone. So that's not why we broke up or anything like that. But I'm just saying, it's just a beautiful thing when you really figure out who you are and understand that it's okay to be alone. And I just wanted to speak on that today on the podcast. So, I mean, if you guys can relate, definitely let me know. You can always hit me up if you want to talk about it. Some people, they are still codependent. If you want to talk about, like, what can I do and what the steps, I can't give y'all, like, how to do it. You just got to do it. You know, I don't know if you need to break up with somebody that you've been with for like fucking 6-7 years to like regather yourself, or maybe you can just tell that person like, hey, maybe we just need to split for a little bit just so I can find myself again. Because once you lose yourself, that shit is, I would never want to lose myself again. One thing I don't want to do. It's like the worst feeling on earth. You're literally like a plastic bag a plastic bag floating through the wind. Having your own personal space, being your own bubble is okay for your growth. Because at the end of the day, like, let's be real, when that person that you be with forever leaves your ass, what do you have? Because you're so connected to that person, you wouldn't know what to do with yourself. Like I was. When I was out of a relationship, I didn't know what to do myself. Fucking went up a fucking wall. Crazy as hell. Losing it. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But now, if I get out of a relationship, I know I'll be okay. Because apparently it wasn't meant to be. And it is what it is, you know? Now getting into the song of the week. Because, you know, I love to tell y'all what type of music I've been listening to. I've been listening to 777 by Mulatto. Whole CD album, straight up. Beginning to end. My girl 8. Period. It's like I like it because it's like the old, like, 2000s type of rap. If you know what I'm talking about, like, it's like you talk your shit, you talk about where you from, like, and you still got like a little bit of a bop with it, as well as she did. I think she literally went through every single song, and it's not rushed or anything like that. Like, you can tell this is like a eclectic. Like, she really put her Lotto put her stamp of approval on this, and this really is gonna put her with longevity in the game. Like, this is amazing. Like, no offense to Megan Thee Stallion. But Megan Thee Stallion, she just be popping out shit, whatever, whatever. And that's why it starts getting more floppy, floppy, floppy. But Lotto, she literally made it art. Like, from beginning to end. This is her second album. And it's like beginning to end. It is very good. Like, I can listen to the whole CD through. And there's a lot of artists I can't do that with. A lot of rappers, female rappers, I cannot do that with. Like even not to be funny, but like Nicki Minaj's Queen, I can't do that with. But with Lotto 777, T. So I definitely say you guys should go check that out. But that's all I got for you guys today. Stay beautiful, stay blessed. I will see you guys next time. Make sure you always tune in on Thursdays. Also follow me on Instagram at the JVaughnology Pod, where you can get more, a little bit of stuff here and there, like a little zhuzh, and then we can always talk on there as well. But I do love you guys. I will talk to you next Thursday. Peace.